They said Daniel Carter came home in the spring of 2012. They were wrong. What came home was a shell, a man-shaped thing that moved through the rooms of his suburban house like a ghost, navigating the ruins of someone else's life. His wife, Sarah, told herself it was temporary. The counselors at the VA hospital said it would take time to readjust, time to decompress, time to remember that he wasn't in Helmand Province anymore. But time, as it turned out, wasn't what Daniel needed. He needed silence, and silence was the one thing he couldn't find. The first week, Sarah tried to make everything perfect. She'd taken time off work, filled the fridge with his favorite foods, even repainted the bedroom in a soft blue he'd mentioned liking once, years ago in a letter. Their daughter Emma was 7 then, old enough to remember her father's face, but young enough that 2 years felt like a lifetime. She approached him cautiously, the way you might approach a dog you're not sure is friendly. Daniel smiled when he saw her. It was a careful smile, rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in the mirror on the transport plane home. He knelt down and opened his arms, and Emma ran to him, and for just a moment, Sarah let herself believe everything would be okay. That night, she woke to find his side of the bed empty. She found him in the kitchen, standing in the dark, staring at the refrigerator, not looking inside it, just staring at the closed door, his hand resting on the handle. His breathing was measured, controlled, the kind of breathing you do when you're trying very hard not to scream. "Daniel," she whispered. He flinched so violently he knocked over a chair. It clattered to the floor, and he was suddenly crouched, arms over his head, making a sound she'd never heard from him before, a low animal whimper that made her skin crawl. "It's okay," she said, not moving. "It's just me. You're home, you're safe." Safe. The word seemed to confuse him. He looked around the kitchen, at the fruit bowl on the counter, the drawings Emma had taped to the fridge, the coffee maker on its timer, as if he'd never seen any of it before, as if this mundane, ordinary room was the strangest place he'd ever been. "I thought," he started, then stopped. His hands were shaking. "I thought I heard something." She hadn't heard anything. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. "There's nothing," she said gently. "Come back to bed." He did eventually, but he didn't sleep. Over the next few weeks, the episodes became more frequent. A car backfiring on the street sent him diving behind the couch. The smell of Sarah's burnt toast triggered something that made him lock himself in the bathroom for 3 hours. Emma's toy helicopter, a cheap plastic thing from a cereal box, ended up in the trash after Sarah found Daniel in the garage at 2 a.m, smashing it with a hammer, tears streaming down his face. The therapist said it was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He prescribed medication, recommended coping strategies, suggested support groups. Daniel went to 2 meetings and never went back. He said the other veterans didn't understand. They talked about their experiences like stories, like things that happened in the past. For Daniel, nothing was past. It was all present, all the time, layered over reality like a film he couldn't wipe away. Sarah started finding the notes in the 3rd month. Little pieces of paper, hidden in strange places, under the bathroom sink, taped inside the kitchen cabinets, folded into the pages of books, each one covered in Daniel's handwriting, frantic, cramped, sometimes barely legible. "They're watching from the tree line. The smell is strongest near the basement door. Emma shouldn't play outside after 1600 hours. Sarah doesn't see them, but they're there. They're always there." She confronted him about it one evening after Emma had gone to bed. He was in the garage again, where he spent most of his time now. He'd set up a cot there, said the bedroom felt too exposed. Too many windows. "Daniel, I found these," she said, holding out the stack of notes. "Baby, you need help. Real help. This isn't... You don't understand, he cut her off, not looking at her. He was organizing tools on his workbench, sorting them by size with meticulous care. I'm keeping us safe. You and Emma. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. Safe from what? From them. Who's them? He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her step back. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. The kind of absolute, unshakable certainty that allows no room for doubt. The enemy, he said simply. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Daniel, we're in Ohio. We're in our home. There's no enemy here. He smiled, sad and patronizing. That's what they want you to think. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in August. Sarah woke to shouting. Daniel's voice, hoarse and desperate, coming from Emma's room. She ran down the hall and found him standing over their daughter's bed, a flashlight in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other. Emma was awake, pressed against her headboard, crying. Daniel, what are you doing? Sarah's voice came out as a shriek. She was in danger, he said, scanning the room with the flashlight. I heard them. They were coming through the window. I secured the perimeter. The window was closed, locked. The screen was intact. There was nothing there, nothing but a man with a knife standing over a terrified child. Get out, Sarah said. Her voice was shaking but firm. Get out of this room right now. He looked at her, confused. I was protecting her. Out. He left. Sarah locked the door behind him and held Emma while she cried, whispering reassurances she no longer believed herself. In the morning, she called the VA hospital. They said they could get him in for an evaluation, but it might take a few weeks. She called his parents. They said to give him space, that all soldiers went through this, that he just needed to toughen up and get over it. She called her sister, who said what Sarah already knew but was too afraid to admit. He's not getting better. He's getting worse, and you need to protect Emma. That night, Sarah asked Daniel to leave. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He just nodded, as if he'd been expecting it, and started packing a bag. She watched him from the doorway of their bedroom, this stranger wearing her husband's face, and tried to remember what he'd been like before. The man who'd proposed to her at a Coldplay concert. The man who'd cried when Emma was born. The man who'd sent her letters from Afghanistan talking about the life they'd build together when he got home. That man was gone. She wasn't sure if he'd died over there or if he'd simply gotten lost somewhere between there and here, trapped in a war zone that existed only in his mind. I'm sorry, he said, zipping up the duffel bag. I really tried to come back. I know, she whispered. He paused at the door, looking back at the house one last time, at the photos on the walls, at Emma's shoes by the door, at the life he'd fought so hard to get back to. The worst part, he said quietly, isn't the sounds or the smells or the nightmares. It's that over there, I always knew who the enemy was. Here. He trailed off, touched his temple with one finger. Here, the enemy is me. Sarah never saw Daniel again after that night. She heard things, secondhand, that he was living in a motel on the edge of town, that he'd stopped taking his medication, that he'd been arrested for trying to break into someone's garage because he thought he'd seen enemy combatants. 3 months later, the police came to her door. They were sorry to inform her. Single car accident, lost control on the highway, no other vehicles involved. But Sarah knew. She'd seen the look in his eyes that last night. She knew that you can survive a war and still not make it home. At the funeral, the veterans folded the flag with military precision and handed it to her with words about honor and service and sacrifice. Emma held her hand and asked if Daddy was in heaven. I don't know, baby, Sarah said honestly, but I hope wherever he is, It's finally quiet. You've just listened to Sanity's Edge, where every mind has a breaking point. Subscribe for more stories that will stay with you long after they end. Do you think insanity is born or made? Tell us in the comments below.